Lisa Harper stood on the deck of the Pacific Dawn as the morning sun painted the ocean in shades of gold. She had been at sea for 3 weeks now, studying deep water life forms that most people never knew existed. The research vessel cut through the calm waters above the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of Earth's oceans. "Dr. Harper, we're ready to drop the nets," called Jake Martinez from across the deck. The young research assistant had joined the team fresh out of college, eager to explore the mysteries of the deep sea. Lisa nodded and walked over to the control station where Dr. Kevin Walsh was checking the equipment. Kevin had led dozens of these expeditions over the past 15 years. He was a good scientist, but sometimes cared more about making discoveries than protecting what they found. "Remember, we're looking for new species of deep-sea fish," Kevin said as he started the winch motors. "The university wants samples, but we need to be careful not to damage anything important." The nets descended into the dark water, dropping down through layers of ocean that had never seen sunlight. Lisa watched the depth readings climb higher and higher. 2,000 feet, 4,000, 8,000. Finally, the nets reached the ocean floor, nearly 7 miles below the surface. For 2 hours, they dragged the nets along the bottom of the trench. Lisa hoped they would find something interesting, but she also worried about disturbing creatures that had lived in peace for millions of years. "Bringing them up now," Jake announced. The winch motors hummed as they slowly pulled the heavy nets back toward the surface. Lisa could see that they had caught something. The nets bulged with mud, rocks, and hopefully some sea life. When the nets finally broke the surface, Lisa saw the usual collection of deep sea creatures. Strange fish with huge eyes and transparent skin, tube worms that looked like alien plants. And then she saw something that made her heart skip a beat. Nestled among the mud and rocks was an object that didn't belong in the deep ocean. It was egg-shaped, about the size of a football, and made of what looked like metal. But as Lisa watched, she could see patterns of blue and green light moving across its surface, like slow lightning. "Kevin, look at this," Lisa called out. She put on thick gloves and carefully lifted the object from the net. It was warm, much warmer than anything should be after coming up from the freezing depths. Kevin hurried over, his eyes wide with excitement. "What is that thing? It's not natural. Look at those light patterns." Lisa held the object carefully in both hands. The lights seemed to pulse faster now, almost like a heartbeat. "It's definitely artificial, but I've never seen anything like it. The metal feels strange, like it's alive somehow." Jake joined them, staring at the mysterious object. "Should we call the Navy? This could be some kind of submarine part or secret weapon." "No," Lisa said quickly. "We need to study it first. This could be the discovery of a lifetime." They carried the object to the ship's laboratory and placed it in a special container filled with seawater. Lisa spent the rest of the day running tests, but her equipment couldn't identify what the object was made of. The metal didn't match anything in her databases. The light patterns continued to pulse and flow across the surface. That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the strange object sitting in her lab. Finally, she got dressed and went to check on it. The laboratory was dark except for the blue and green lights dancing across the object's surface. As she approached the container, the lights began pulsing faster. Lisa leaned closer to get a better look. That's when she heard a soft cracking sound. A thin line appeared on the object's surface. Then another. Lisa realized with shock that it wasn't just an object. It was an egg, and something was trying to hatch. The cracks spread quickly across the surface. The lights grew brighter and more urgent. Lisa wanted to call Kevin and Jake, but she was afraid to leave. Whatever was inside might need help. With a final crack, the shell split open. Lisa gasped as she saw what emerged from the egg. It looked like a tiny dragon from old stories, but real and alive. Its scales were crystal clear and shifted colors like the lights on the shell. It had 4 small legs, wings that were still wet and folded, and the most intelligent amber eyes Lisa had ever seen. The creature was no bigger than a house cat. It looked around the laboratory with curiosity rather than fear. When its eyes met Lisa's, she felt something strange happen in her mind. Not words exactly, but feelings and images. The creature was trying to communicate with her. Lisa slowly reached out her hand. The tiny dragon sniffed her fingers and then nuzzled against her palm. Its scales were warm and smooth. Lisa could feel it purring like a kitten. "Hello, little one," Lisa whispered. "Where did you come from?" The creature chirped softly and climbed onto her hand. Lisa lifted it carefully from the container. It seemed to trust her completely, curling up in her palms like it belonged there. Lisa knew she should wake Kevin and report this discovery immediately. This creature would change everything humans thought they knew about life on Earth. But as she looked down at the tiny dragon sleeping peacefully in her hands, she felt protective of it. She made a decision that would change her life and the future of humanity. She would keep the creature safe and learn about it slowly. She would call it Pearl because of the way its scales caught and reflected light like precious gems. Lisa had no idea that far above Earth, ancient sensors had detected the hatching. She didn't know that across the galaxy, a powerful ruler was preparing to come looking for her lost child. All Lisa knew was that she had found something amazing, and she would do whatever it took to protect it. Across the galaxy, in a palace built from crystal and starlight, Empress Zarathul felt something she had not felt in many months: hope. The massive dragon ruler stood before a wall of glowing screens that showed star maps and energy readings from across 17 different solar systems. Her humanoid form was tall and powerful, with golden skin that seemed to hold inner fire. When she was angry or excited, her eyes glowed like small suns. Right now, they burned brighter than they had in a very long time. "Commander Harrison," she called, her voice echoing through the vast throne room. "Come here immediately." Drake Harrison appeared within moments, moving with the quick steps of someone used to answering the Empress's calls without delay. He was half human and half dragon, one of the few beings in the galaxy who could serve as a bridge between the two species. His mother had been human, his father a dragon noble. This made him valuable to the Empire and trusted by Zarathul. "Yes, Your Majesty," Drake said, bowing his head in respect. Zarathul pointed to one of the screens showing Earth. A small red dot pulsed on the planet's surface, indicating a life signal that the Empire's sensors had just detected. "My child lives," she said simply. Drake's eyes widened. He knew the story of the lost infant. 3 months ago, the Empress's youngest offspring had been traveling with a convoy of ships to a secure nursery world. A massive space storm had torn through their route, destroying 2 vessels and scattering the others across light years of space. When they found the wreckage of the ship carrying Kethara, there had been no sign of the infant dragon. The escape pods were empty. The crew was dead. Everyone assumed the child had been lost to the void of space, and Empress Zarathul had mourned like any mother would. "The infant's life signal just appeared on this primitive world," Zarathul continued, studying the data. "The planet is called Earth, 3rd world from its star, mostly water, inhabited by a species that has barely discovered space travel." Drake moved closer to examine the readings. How did the child survive in space for 3 months? And how did it reach this world? "I don't know," Zarathul admitted. "But dragon infants are stronger than most people realize. Kethara may have found a way to survive by going into deep sleep. As for reaching this planet, perhaps the escape pod's emergency systems guided it there." The Empress began pacing, her excitement and worry making it hard for her to stand still. She had ruled the Dragon Empire for over 3,000 years. She had conquered worlds, made peace between species that had fought for centuries, and built a civilization that spanned multiple galaxies. But none of that mattered as much as getting her child back safely. "What do we know about these humans?" she asked. Drake accessed the Empire's databases on Earth. "They're a young species, only recently developed nuclear technology. No space travel beyond their own moon. They fight among themselves frequently but show remarkable creativity and adaptability. Are they dangerous to Dragon Young?" "Unknown," Drake replied honestly. "They've never encountered our species before. But initial scans suggest they're carbon-based life forms, similar to many species we've made contact with. Some humans show high levels of empathy and protective instincts toward young creatures, even ones not of their own species." Zarathul studied the images of Earth that appeared on the screens. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. It looked like a peaceful world, but she knew that appearances could be deceiving. "I want a full report on whoever found my child," she commanded. "Monitor their behavior. Are they treating Kethara well? Are they trying to hurt or study the infant? Do they understand what they've found?" "Yes, Your Majesty. I'll have our best surveillance teams track the signal." Zarathul walked to the great window that looked out over her capital city. Millions of dragons in both humanoid and full dragon form moved through the air between crystal towers. This was the heart of one of the galaxy's greatest civilizations, but right now all she could think about was one small child lost on a distant world. "There's something else you should know," Drake said carefully. "According to our laws, if primitive species discover our young, we have two options. We either bring them into the Empire as allies, or we ensure they cannot reveal our existence to the rest of their world." Zarathul knew this law well. She had written parts of it herself. The Dragon Empire had survived for millennia by being careful about which species they contacted and when. Too early contact with primitive civilizations often led to worship, fear, or attempts to steal dragon technology. "Monitor the situation closely," she decided. "I want to know everything about these humans before I make any decisions. How they treat my child will determine how we treat their species." Drake nodded and began to leave, but Zarathul called him back. "Commander, prepare my personal ship and a small escort fleet. If these humans prove to be a threat to Kethara, I will retrieve my child personally." "And if they prove to be worthy of contact?" Zarathul smiled, the first real smile she had worn in months. "Then perhaps humanity will gain some very powerful friends." After Drake left, Zarathul remained at the window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere among those distant points of light was her child, in the care of an alien species she had never met. She remembered when Kethara had first hatched, barely 2 months before the convoy disaster. The infant had been curious about everything, always exploring and trying to communicate with anyone who came near. Kethara had her father's adventurous spirit and her mother's intelligence. "Hold on, little one," Zarathul whispered to the stars. "Mother is coming." She didn't know that on Earth, a human woman named Lisa was gently feeding her child and singing soft songs to help the infant sleep. She didn't know that this same human had already decided to protect Kethara from anyone who might want to harm her. But she would learn soon enough. And when she did, it would change the relationship between dragons and humans forever. The Dragon Empire's greatest ships began preparing for a journey to a small blue world where the fate of 2 species would be decided by how one human treated a lost child. Lisa had been caring for Pearl for 5 days when she realized the tiny dragon was far more intelligent than any animal she had ever studied. It started with simple things. Pearl would point to the food she wanted instead of just eating whatever Lisa offered. When Lisa spoke to her, Pearl would tilt her head and make soft chirping sounds that seemed to have different meanings. Most amazing of all, Pearl appeared to understand human emotions. When Lisa felt sad about hiding Pearl from Kevin and Jake, the little dragon would climb onto her shoulder and nuzzle her cheek. When Lisa was excited about a new discovery, Pearl would flutter her small wings and make happy clicking noises. "You're not just an animal, are you?" Lisa said one morning as she fed Pearl small pieces of fish. "You're trying to learn our language." Pearl looked directly into Lisa's eyes and made a sound that was almost like the word yes. Lisa's hands shook as she set down the food bowl. Over the next few hours, she began testing Pearl's intelligence more carefully. She showed the dragon simple pictures, and Pearl correctly identified them by pointing or making specific sounds. When Lisa counted to 3, Pearl would tap her tiny claws 3 times on the table. By the end of the week, Pearl was speaking her first human words. "Lisa," the dragon said clearly, pointing at her caretaker. Lisa nearly dropped the beaker she was holding. "Did you just say my name?" "Lisa, good," Pearl said, her voice high and musical. "Pearl hungry." Over the next few days, Pearl's vocabulary grew rapidly. She learned words for food, water, sleep, and play. She began asking simple questions like, "Where go?" and "What this?" Lisa realized she was watching a mind that learned faster than any human child, but their time together was running out. The Pacific Dawn was scheduled to return to San Diego in 2 days. Lisa had managed to keep Pearl hidden in her private laboratory, but she knew Kevin was getting suspicious about her secretive behavior. "Lisa, we need to talk," Kevin said on their last night at sea. He knocked on her laboratory door and entered before she could stop him. Lisa quickly moved to block his view of Pearl, who was sitting on her desk eating a piece of salmon. "I've been patient because you're a good scientist," Kevin continued, "but you've been acting strange since we brought up that object from the deep. I know you found something important, and I want to know what it is." "It's nothing," Lisa said, but her voice wasn't convincing. Kevin stepped around her and saw Pearl for the first time. The tiny dragon looked up at him with curious amber eyes and tilted her head. "Hello?" Pearl said politely. Kevin's mouth fell open. He stared at the dragon for a full minute without speaking. Finally, he managed to say, "What is that thing?" "Her name is Pearl," Lisa said protectively. "She hatched from that egg we found. She's intelligent, Kevin. More intelligent than we are in some ways." Kevin moved closer, his scientist mind overriding his shock. "This is incredible. This creature could be the greatest discovery in human history. We need to get it to a proper laboratory immediately. Think of what we could learn." "She's not an it," Lisa said firmly, "and her name is Pearl." "Kevin no hurt Pearl," the dragon said, looking directly at the expedition leader. "Pearl friend Lisa." Kevin sat down heavily in a nearby chair. "It speaks. It actually speaks and understands us." "She learns very fast," Lisa explained. "She's been picking up new words every day. I think she's trying to understand our culture and technology." Kevin stood up, his excitement growing. "We'll be famous. This discovery will change everything. The university will give us unlimited funding. The government will want to study it immediately." Lisa stepped between Kevin and Pearl. "I won't let anyone experiment on her. She's not a lab animal." "Lisa, friend," Pearl said softly. "Pearl, stay, Lisa." Kevin looked frustrated. "You can't keep a creature like this as a pet. It belongs in a research facility where proper scientists can study it." "I am a proper scientist," Lisa said angrily. "And I've learned more about her in 1 week than a laboratory full of researchers could learn in a year. She trusts me." Their argument was interrupted by Jake's voice over the ship's communication system. "All hands to the deck immediately. We have incoming aircraft." Lisa and Kevin rushed outside with Pearl hidden inside Lisa's jacket. 3 black helicopters were approaching the Pacific Dawn. They moved with military precision and bore no identifying markings. The helicopters landed on the ship's deck, and armed soldiers emerged from each one. A tall man in a dark suit followed them. He walked directly to where the crew had gathered. "I'm Agent Ryan Carter with the Department of Extraterrestrial Research," the man announced. "This vessel is now under government control. We're here to retrieve an object that was brought up from the deep ocean 6 days ago." Lisa felt her heart sink. Somehow, the government had learned about Pearl. "We don't have any extraterrestrial objects," Kevin said, but his voice lacked confidence. Agent Carter smiled coldly. "Our satellites detected an energy signature from this vessel that matches no known Earth technology. The signature appeared suddenly 6 days ago and has been growing stronger since then." Lisa realized that Pearl's presence was somehow detectable by government sensors. The dragon had been sending out some kind of signal without anyone knowing it. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way," Carter continued. "Cooperate, and you'll be well compensated for your discovery. Refuse, and you'll be detained as a matter of national security." Kevin started to speak, but Lisa cut him off. "The object was destroyed accidentally. We were running tests and it broke apart." Carter studied Lisa's face carefully. "I don't think you're telling the truth, Dr. Harper. Our readings show the energy source is still active and very close by." As if sensing the danger, Pearl poked her head out of Lisa's jacket. Several soldiers immediately raised their weapons, but Carter held up a hand to stop them. "Well, well," Carter said. "This is even more interesting than we thought." Pearl looked around at all the armed humans and began to make a high-pitched sound that Lisa had never heard before. It wasn't speech or the usual chirping. It sounded almost like a distress call. "Pearl's scared," the dragon said, climbing higher up Lisa's jacket to hide near her neck. Carter motioned to his soldiers. "Secure the creature immediately. Use tranquilizers if necessary." Lisa backed away, holding Pearl protectively. "She's not dangerous. She's just a baby." "That baby is alien technology that could be a threat to national security," Carter replied. "Hand it over voluntarily or we'll take it by force." Lisa looked around desperately. The soldiers were closing in from all sides. Kevin stood frozen in shock. Jake and the other crew members watched helplessly. That's when Pearl's distress call reached its target. High above Earth, sensors aboard Empress Zarathul's ship detected the signal. The dragon ruler, who had been monitoring the situation carefully, realized her child was in immediate danger. "All ships, prepare for emergency descent," she commanded. "My child needs help now." Lisa had no idea that help was coming. All she knew was that she had to protect Pearl from the people who wanted to take her away. As the soldiers moved closer, Lisa held the tiny dragon against her heart and prepared to fight for the most important discovery in human history. The first sign that something extraordinary was about to happen came from Pearl herself. The tiny dragon suddenly stopped making distress calls and lifted her head from Lisa's jacket. Her amber eyes began to glow brighter than Lisa had ever seen them, and she started making new sounds. Not words or chirps, but something that sounded almost like music. "What's she doing?" Agent Carter demanded, motioning for his soldiers to move closer. Lisa felt Pearl's small body vibrating with excitement. "I think she's calling for help." Carter laughed harshly. "From who? There's nothing but ocean for 1,000 miles in any direction." That's when the sky began to change. High above the Pacific dawn, clouds that had been white and peaceful started to swirl in a perfect circle. The ocean, which had been calm all morning, began to churn and rise in waves that made no sense. The ship's instruments started beeping wildly as electromagnetic readings spiked beyond anything they had ever recorded. "Sir," one of the soldiers called out, pointing upward with a shaking hand. "Look at the sky!" Everyone on the deck tilted their heads back and saw something that would be burned into their memories forever. The swirling clouds were beginning to glow with golden light. The light grew brighter and brighter until it was painful to look at directly. Then, through the center of the light, something massive began to descend. It was a dragon unlike anything from Earth's myths and legends. This creature was nearly 200 feet long from nose to tail, with scales that looked like molten gold and wings that seemed to block out half the sky. Its eyes were the same amber color as Pearl's, but they burned like twin stars. Agent Carter and his soldiers raised their weapons, but the guns looked like toys compared to the magnificent being that landed gently on the ocean's surface beside their ship. "Open fire!" Carter shouted. "No!" Lisa screamed, stepping in front of the soldiers. "You'll only make it angry." The bullets struck the dragon's golden scales and bounced off harmlessly. The creature didn't even seem to notice the attack. Instead, it focused entirely on the small ship where Pearl was being held. When the dragon spoke, its voice carried across the water like thunder, but the words were in perfect English. "I am Empress Zarathul of the Dragon Empire," the massive being announced. "You have something that belongs to me." Agent Carter's face had gone completely white, but he managed to keep his weapon pointed at the dragon. "We represent the United States government. This creature was found in our territorial waters." Empress Zarathul lowered her great head until she was looking directly at Carter. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet but filled with deadly warning. "That creature is my child." Pearl began chirping excitedly from Lisa's arms. "Mama here! Mama, come for Pearl!" Lisa stared in amazement as she realized what was happening. The tiny dragon she had been caring for was actually the offspring of this enormous, clearly intelligent being. No wonder Pearl had learned so quickly and shown such advanced intelligence. The Empress's eyes moved from Agent Carter to Lisa. "You are the human who has been caring for my offspring." Lisa nodded, not trusting her voice to work properly. "Give me my child," Zarathul commanded gently. Agent Carter stepped forward. "That alien is property of the United States government. We won't release it to anyone without proper authorization." The dragon's eyes began to glow more brightly. "You dare claim ownership of my offspring?" The temperature around the ship suddenly rose by 20 degrees. The ocean water began to steam. Several of the soldiers dropped their weapons and backed away from the incredible heat radiating from the dragon's body. "I will ask once more," Empress Zarathul said, her voice now carrying the promise of terrible consequences. "Return my child to me." Lisa made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. Instead of handing Pearl to Agent Carter or immediately giving her to the dragon, she stepped forward and spoke directly to the Empress. "Your daughter is safe," Lisa said, her voice steady despite her fear. "I've been taking care of her since she hatched. She's learned to speak our language and she's very smart and curious about everything around her." Zarathul studied Lisa with ancient eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. "You protected her when others would have harmed her?" Lisa glanced at Agent Carter and his soldiers. "Yes, some people wanted to lock her in a laboratory and run experiments on her. I wouldn't let them." Pearl chirped agreement. "Lisa, good mama. Lisa, keep Pearl safe from bad humans." Something remarkable happened then. The massive dragon's expression softened as she looked at Lisa. The burning anger in her eyes was replaced by something that looked almost like gratitude. "You cared for my child as if she were your own," Zarathul said wonderingly. "Even though she is alien to your species." "She's just a baby," Lisa replied simply. "Babies need protection and love no matter what species they are." Agent Carter saw his chance slipping away. "Secure the alien immediately," he shouted to his soldiers. "Use whatever force necessary." The soldiers raised their weapons again, but this time they found themselves unable to move. Empress Zarathul had used her powers to freeze them in place without harming them. "Your weapons cannot hurt me," she told Carter calmly. "But threatening my child and the human who protected her is unwise." She turned her attention back to Lisa. "Step forward, human. I would speak with you." Lisa walked to the edge of the ship, still holding Pearl in her arms. The tiny dragon was practically bouncing with excitement at seeing her mother again. "What is your name?" the Empress asked. "Lisa Harper. I'm a marine biologist." "Lisa Harper," Zarathul repeated as if memorizing it. "You have done something remarkable. In 3,000 years of life, across 17 star systems and dozens of species, I have never encountered a being who showed such care for a child not of their own kind." Pearl reached up and touched Lisa's cheek with one tiny claw. "Pearl love Lisa. Lisa stay with Pearl." Lisa felt tears in her eyes as she realized she would have to say goodbye to the little dragon who had become so important to her. "Your daughter has to go home with you," Lisa said softly to Pearl. "But I'll never forget you." Empress Zarathul watched this exchange with growing amazement. Here was a human showing genuine love for a dragon child, and the child clearly returning that affection. This was not what she had expected to find on this primitive world. As Lisa prepared to hand Pearl over to her mother, the Empress made a decision that would change the course of history for both their species. "Lisa Harper," she said formally, "you have proven that humanity possesses qualities that my people value above all others: compassion, honor, the protection of the innocent." Lisa looked up at the massive dragon, wondering what she meant. "Would you like to hear a secret that will change your world forever?" Zarathul asked, with what might have been a smile. Lisa held Pearl close as she looked up at the enormous dragon floating beside their ship. The tiny dragon had started glowing softly, the same golden light that radiated from her mother's scales. "What secret?" Lisa asked, though she wasn't sure she was ready for the answer. Empress Zarathul's massive form began to shimmer and change. In moments, the 200-foot dragon had transformed into a tall, regal woman with golden skin and amber eyes. She stepped gracefully onto the deck of the Pacific Dawn, causing the soldiers to back away in amazement. "I can take any form I choose," Zarathul explained. "All of my people can. We are an ancient race that has watched over this galaxy for millions of years, protecting young species and guiding them toward peace." Pearl chirped excitedly and flew from Lisa's arms to land on her mother's shoulder. "Mama, show Lisa! Lisa like Mama!" Agent Carter found his voice again, though it shook with fear and confusion. "This is impossible. Dragons aren't real. They're just myths." Zarathul smiled at him with gentle amusement. "Your myths came from the few times my people visited Earth in your distant past. We learned to be more careful about contact with primitive worlds after humans began worshipping us as gods." She turned back to Lisa, her expression becoming serious. "That is why your actions matter so much. My people have a law about contact with new species. We can either welcome them as allies in our galactic community, or we must ensure they cannot reveal our existence until they are more advanced." Lisa understood the implications immediately. "You mean you either make friends with a species, or you make sure they can't tell anyone about you?" "Exactly. The decision is based on how that species treats dragon young when they find them. It shows us their true nature." Kevin, who had been silent during the confrontation, finally spoke up. "How many species have passed your test?" Zarathul looked sad. "Fewer than we hoped. Most species we encounter are driven by fear, greed, or the desire to use our technology for war. They see dragon young as tools to be studied or weapons to be controlled." Agent Carter stepped forward again, apparently unable to accept what was happening. "I don't care what you are or where you come from. That creature belongs to the United States government." The Empress's eyes flashed dangerously. "My daughter belongs to no government. She is a free being of the Dragon Empire." "Then we'll take her by force," Carter declared, signaling to his soldiers. What happened next showed Lisa exactly why the Dragon Empire had survived for millions of years. Zarathul didn't attack the soldiers or threaten them. Instead, she simply raised one hand, and every weapon on the ship stopped working. The soldiers pulled their triggers, but nothing happened. The helicopter's engines died. Even the ship's radio went silent. "Your technology is based on principles we mastered when your son was young," she said calmly. "I could disable every electronic device on your planet with a thought." Agent Carter's face went red with anger and frustration. "This is an act of war against the United States." "No," Lisa said suddenly, stepping between Carter and the Empress. "This is what happens when you try to steal someone's child." She looked directly at Zarathul. "I understand your law and why you have it. Agent Carter doesn't represent all of humanity. Most of us aren't like him." Zarathul studied Lisa's face carefully. "How do you know this? Your species fights constantly among yourselves." "Because I've spent my whole life studying living things," Lisa replied. "I've seen mothers of every species fight to protect their young. I've seen humans risk their lives to save baby animals they've never seen before. Most people want to help and protect, not hurt and control." Pearl flew back to Lisa and perched on her arm. "Lisa right. Lisa good human. Many humans good like Lisa." The Empress was quiet for a long moment, considering Lisa's words. Then she moved closer to Lisa until they were standing face to face. "You protected my child when you had nothing to gain and everything to lose," Zarathul said softly. "You cared for her, taught her, and loved her as your own. You showed her the best of humanity." Lisa felt tears running down her face as she realized how much Pearl meant to her. "She's special. Any parent would be proud to have a child like her." "Lisa stay with Pearl?" the tiny dragon asked hopefully. "Pearl teach Lisa dragon words. Lisa teach Pearl human things." Zarathul smiled, and when she did, her whole face lit up with warmth. "That is an interesting idea." She stepped even closer to Lisa and spoke in a voice so quiet that only Lisa could hear her. "You have shown more honor toward my child than most of my own subjects show to each other. Humanity has proven itself worthy of our friendship. Your species will never stand alone in the darkness of space again." Lisa's heart stopped as she understood what the Empress was saying. "You mean—" "I mean that because of your kindness to one lost child, your entire species is now under the protection of the Dragon Empire. You will have access to our technology, our medicine, our knowledge. Earth will become a member world of our Galactic Alliance." The implications hit Lisa like a tidal wave. Diseases that killed millions could be cured. Pollution and climate change could be solved. Humanity could join a community of peaceful species among the stars, all because she had cared for a baby dragon. "There is one condition," Zarathul continued. "Humanity needs an ambassador to our people, someone who understands both species and can help them learn to work together." She looked meaningfully at Lisa. "You want me to be Earth's ambassador to the Dragon Empire?" Lisa asked in amazement. "Pearl want Lisa come!" the tiny dragon said excitedly. "Lisa live with Pearl and Mama in Big Palace in Stars!" Lisa looked around at Agent Carter, who was staring in shock, at Kevin and Jake, who couldn't believe what they were hearing, and at the soldiers who had lowered their useless weapons. Then she looked at Pearl, whose amber eyes were bright with hope and love. "I accept," Lisa said. Empress Zarathul smiled and raised her hand. The sky above them filled with golden light as dozens of dragon ships descended from the clouds. Each ship was beautiful beyond description, like flying palaces made of crystal and starlight. "Welcome to the larger universe, Ambassador Harper," the Empress said formally. "Your new life begins today." As Lisa was lifted gently aboard the Empress's flagship with Pearl in her arms, She looked down at Earth one last time. Soon, her planet would join a galactic community dedicated to peace and protection of all life. She had set out to study deep-sea creatures and had ended up changing the destiny of her entire species. Years later, when humans traveled freely among the stars and Earth had become a peaceful, prosperous world, people would remember the day that everything changed. It was the day a marine biologist chose love over fear, compassion over control, and protection over possession. It was the day humanity learned that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can have the greatest consequences in the universe.